do? What else could be the answer for somebody who's struggling with their growth hormone? And the answer is in many ways a sauna. The sauna can do something that I don't necessarily want to go into. It's a very interesting topic that I've read a lot about, but I don't think this is the right place to unpack it. And that is it induces your heat shock proteins, really helping your body to figure out which proteins should be replicating and which ones aren't in a healthy enough form, or maybe they're wound up and folded in a way that aren't correct. A sauna has very good data for increasing and stimulating growth hormone, and it improves insulin sensitivity. Now, in the show notes, I'll put the links to the studies that these claims came from, but I won't unpack those as far as what I would like to show you about is how do you think about a sauna? So a sauna is stressing your body. So just like fasting for 72 hours was a stress, we are denying that glucose access, and we want the body to find a place to produce the other energy, that ketogenic energy, from fat-based calories that are in storage. Unfortunately, when you've had years of high insulin, it can be a really difficult transition. And I, again, would never recommend this in somebody who's been on the ketogenic diet for 2 weeks. I want you practicing ketosis, and I really go through this in a solid way in that course. I didn't just come up with these rules. I really have coached people through the ketogenic diet. I see where they fall off. It is so preventable if they know these rules, and those are what's outlined in that course. But as you look to say, okay, now that they've been practicing ketosis and they're really in a better place than they were, they do make better ketones than I had at the start of this show. And they're still not, they're still suffering from several of the things that are linked to growth hormone, to low growth hormone. So as I look at the other places that you can stress the body, stressing them by denying food, yes, it's a stress, and we want that mitochondria to work out to do an advanced level of performance. That's why we're fasting. We're stimulating autophagy by saying, I want you to use a different option. But that's not an option for several of my patients that have a higher level of burden from the previous health problems, many of which I outlined on that first slide. And as I asked them to consider a sauna, they kind of treat it like I did when my husband said, I think we should start using the sauna. And I'm like, what? That sounds yucky. It's hot and I sweat. I go to the gym to sweat. And honestly, since COVID and even long before that, I've been in a phase where 4 teenagers doesn't make it that I can't seem to find a rhythm for the gym, but I have been able to find a rhythm for the sauna. And the more I study this, the more I'm able to say, it's not perfect. I should go to the gym more than I have been in the last season, but what an awesome substitute, especially for those patients that can't do the gym. They really aren't healthy enough for that. So as you look at the options for sauna, you can use something called a Finnish, and what that means is from Finland. The source of a sauna, a Finnish sauna, is usually a steamed sauna. So they, just like in this picture here, those coals get hot, and then you pour water over that, and steam is created in the air. That moist air heats higher, and therefore heats our bodies a little more intensely than dry heat. Dry heat feels better. It doesn't have the moisture in the air, so it's a little easier to tolerate. And of course, we have another option in the last probably 15 years, and that's infrared saunas. Infrared saunas do not use the wasted energy, if you would, to heat the air. They really focus those waves of energy to heat the person. So I know it's not their marketing strategy to say it's kind of like a microwave, but it's kind of like a microwave. The heat, the increased heat that happens from those waves of light energy, infrared light, really do raise that body's temperature, and it's not nearly as uncomfortable. However, the goal for improving growth hormone still starts with an increase in your own temperature, that you are asking the body to stress, to deal with this stress, which is heat, And just like I don't ask people to show up on the second week of a ketogenic diet and fast for 72 hours, that is far too high of a stress for what their body's ready for. And in very similar ways, I wouldn't ask somebody who's just started running to show up and do a 10-mile run with a running club. There is a gradual increase in delivering stress or asking your body to respond to stress. And I mean, common sense says be careful with this. I hope that's understood by anybody listening. There are some bodies that are not going to handle this very well at the beginning. And in fact, when I was talking with my group this past week, my support group, and they ask about we mentioned sauna. One of those comments that every doctor, by about the third year of practice, you've heard enough patients say this that it just makes your skin crawl. The two things that doctors hear over and over again is, I'm not really overweight, I'm just big boned. That's a common statement that you want to just unpack for the patient, saying, no, you're not that big boned. That doesn't accommodate, the bone mass does not accommodate for those 50 pounds that you are carrying around. It doesn't match. The other thing that you hear patients say a lot is, I don't sweat. I just don't sweat. And I had a patient say that, or I had an attendee say that, and I'm like, no. Let me help you with that. Do not say the words, I don't sweat. Yes, you sweat. You're human. Without sweating, you would die. It's like saying, I don't sleep. Yes, you sleep. You might not do it very well. And when you look at the exposure to a sauna and that syndrome or that inability to sweat, it's a predictor of how healthy they are. How well can their body respond to this stress and deliver the mechanism to compensate for that extra heat. I mean, so when people say, I don't sweat, what I correct them by saying is, you haven't practiced sweating. And they say, I don't sweat. I'm like, let's have you get into the sauna at 180 degrees and I'll show you that you sweat. But actually, if you're one of the people who says, I don't sweat, which means you don't practice sweating, for heaven's sakes, do not get into a sauna at 180 degrees. That's way too stressful. I mean, your body's going to have a tough time. All right, so let's go. Now that I've explained the three types of heat for those saunas, I like you to see this study. So this study was looking at, there's two rows there for dry heat, and then there's the bottom one for humid heat. Now the infrared wasn't included in this study, but what I want you to notice is they set the temperature of that sauna to 80 degrees Celsius, or about 180 degrees Fahrenheit. When it was dry heat, they set it to 100 degrees Celsius, which is 212 degrees Fahrenheit. Oh my goodness, I don't think my sauna goes that high. But when it comes to humid heat, the ability to deliver the heat in the air using 80 degrees Celsius, and then that correlates to about 180 degrees Fahrenheit. And what they were looking at was the response of these growth hormones, of not just growth hormone, but they were looking at other fat-based hormones. Growth hormone is what I was reading this study for, but they were measuring to see how well did these healthy people increase their body temperature, and what did that do to the production of their growth hormone. All three of these categories increased their growth hormone, but the humid heat increased it the most robust. If you look at the change in body temperature, it had a pretty direct correlation to how much growth hormone was produced. So these folks were in the saunas for at least 20 minutes. They did stress some of them a little further. And there were several other studies I looked at, but pretty much all of them were using a dry heat at 80 degrees Celsius, a dry heat at 100 degrees Celsius, and then pushing that humid heat at 80 degrees Celsius. Now, I'll be honest, when I first started a sauna, there's no way I could handle 180 degrees for a humid sauna. I started like at 140, and it was not fun. I did not do very well. But what happens is the outcomes for the sauna is correlated when you look at the when you look at the data and when people on a research team are trying to correlate the impact that a sauna has on the patient, they're looking at the delta or the change in temperature. So with the dry heat set at 180 degrees Fahrenheit, they increase their body temperature by 1.1 degrees Celsius. So let's flip over to what I would be measuring, which would be Fahrenheit. So they went from 98.6, which is normal body temperature, to about 100.5. And indeed, that did increase their growth hormone. When they took the dry heat to a higher level, they increased their growth hormone, or they increased their temperature by 1.9 degrees Celsius, which again is taking it from 98.6 to 102.0. And then finally, when they used the heat, when they took those coals and instead of just leaving the air dry, they put water over the heat and really made a steam, they increased their temperature, their body temperature, from 98.6 to 104.3. That is really uncomfortable. I don't know if I've ever hit that. But the point of showing you this is to say, just like with the ketogenic diet, I don't show up and measure my numbers at the beginning and end of each show because it's like convenient, or it shows when I have a starting number as low as today's was. No, I do that because measuring my own data is how you can predict what's happening on the inside. And when you go back and look at the Instagram feeds for the last 2 years, you can see each week I fast looking at my data. And the same goes for when I'm in a sauna. So you'll see several times that I post and I have the picture of what the temperature is. Like today it's 98.4, right? So that's the beginning temperature. And it has a picture of how high was it when I either had to step out of the sauna and just take a break, or when I really was able to have the outcome of improving or increasing my growth hormone, but increasing and really stimulating autophagy.
Please subscribe to my channel. And don't forget to click the notification bell so you don't miss out on any new videos. Stay tuned.